Good morning, students. Uh, we are living in such a pandemic time, and I hope that all of you are fine at your places, and you will be fine if you will stay at your home. So this is a simple small message from my side to you. Let us now start our today's online video. Our today's video depends on the topic which is called object-oriented design and modeling in UML. So far we have studied about object-oriented design and about UML diagrams also. Object-oriented design are the designs which allows a user or a programmer to think or to relate the things with the real world environment and to show the connectivity of various things by taking consideration of object-orientism. We need those tools which help to draw them. So, UML diagrams provide us such facility to draw the diagrams in that effective manner and easy manner, so that the things can relate with the real world environment also. So let us first understand the concept of object-oriented analysis and design. So students, as you can see that object-oriented analysis and design is basically a software engineering approach which makes the system, or you can say which models the system in such a way that it can relate with the real world environment, or you can say which models the system as interacting objects. So each object basically represents a system entity in every diagram, which plays important role to develop the system or to analyze the system, which further can be used for designing purposes. So what does object-oriented analysis says? It is the part of requirement analysis which mainly focuses on functional requirements for the systems. Further, this knowledge can be inculcated into designing part. So object-oriented designing takes analysis model as input and produces implementation specification. So basically, when these two approaches combine with each other, it will form object-oriented analysis and design. This we can further understand with the help of this diagram, in which functional requirements, when fed into object-oriented analysis model, then it can passes to the object-oriented design model, and finally object-oriented design model develops implementation specification. So these two approaches, when combined together, finally generates implementation ideas for development of code. Now let us understand what is modeling. Till now we have studied about object-oriented analysis and object-oriented design, what these two things are and how basically both these two things relate with each other and work. Now let us understand what is modeling. So basically there are three types of models present. Number one, class model, number two, state model, and number three, interaction model. So let us understand all these models one by one. So what is class model? The class model describes the structure of the object, the relationship between these objects, their attributes, and most importantly the operations of the object. So as you can see, if you know how to design a class, then while writing a program we can first of all declare, or we can think about objects, various objects. Then we can combine the common properties of all objects into one place, which is called a class. In class we define attributes related to the objects, functions, or you can say operations, and relationships between various objects of same class or different classes. So the state and interaction models use the context of the class model, and the goal of the class model is to capture the concept from the real worlds. It only shows, or it is used to capture the real world environment, which helps you to understand the problem more clearly. Class model can be represented by class diagrams. You can represent the class models with the help of class diagrams, or you can say you can design the real world problem with the help of class diagrams. So the classes in these diagrams define the attributes and operations of each object. I hope you get the better understanding. Your questions are always invited. If you feel any time that you are having some questions while listening this video, you can simply contact to me. I'll try to give you the best answers. Next type of model is state model. So the state model says that it works with the time and sequencing of the operations of the object, and on occurrence of the events, the object change their state. The state model captures the control aspect of the system. The state model is represented by state diagram. Each state diagram represents state and the event sequences. Students, in my previous videos, I have discussed state diagrams in detail. If you need information, you can go to Study Online ITM GOI channel and find my online video which is based on state diagram. Let us move further. Till now we have studied about class model and state model. The third type of model is called interaction model. So the interaction model is basically describes how one object can interact with another object, or you can say that how interaction model describes one object collaborates with other in order to achieve behavior of the system. The overall behavior of the system can be represented with the help of state and interaction model. The interaction model includes use case diagrams, sequence diagrams and activity diagrams. Students, you can go further to my other online videos where you can find out the details about sequence diagrams and activity diagrams. You can check those videos so that you can get better understanding about sequence diagrams and activity diagrams. The use case diagrams show how the outsider actor interacts with functionality. The sequence diagram represents the objects that interact and the interaction time sequence of their interaction. The activity diagram represents flow of control among objects. Let us understand about class modeling in detail. But before going into deep, we need to first understand about what a class model is, or you can say what basically a class is. So, as we have discussed that a class is a blueprint which is used to create objects. A class is the thing where the common properties, or you can say the attributes of the objects resides. The class defines what object can do in the form of operations on which objects performs. So this is what a class is. Now what is a class diagram? So as we discussed in my previous slide, that class diagram is basically the representation of class modeling. The class diagram also gives an overview of a software system by displaying classes, attributes, operations and their relationships. So this diagram also includes the class name, attributes and operations in separate designated compartments. So this is what the class diagram is. Now, benefits of class diagram. Class diagram illustrates data models for even very complex information systems. It provides an overview of how the application is structured before studying the actual code. This can easily reduce the maintenance time. It helps for better understanding of general schematics of an application. It also allows drawing detailed charts which highlights code required to be programmed. It is helpful for developers and other stakeholders. Now, let us discuss about elements of class diagram, which is equally important. So till now we have seen that a class diagram is made up of three things: class name, attributes, operations performed. So what do you mean by a class name? As you can see in the diagram, you found that here class name is present. The whole area is basically divided into three parts. Number one, class name. Number two, attributes, which is present in the middle part, and the lower part contains operations. So the class name is present at the topmost part. So as you can see, Few things you need to memorize about class name. The name of the class is only needed in the graphical representation of the class. It is also needed while doing programming. Class name is needed there also. It appears in the topmost compartment in the diagram. We are talking about the diagram. It appears in the topmost compartment in the diagram. A class is the blueprint of an object which can share the same relationships, attributes, operations and semantics. The class is rendered as a rectangle including its name, attributes and operations in separate compartments. So as you can see here, some rectangle box is designed in which name is represented in topmost part, attribute is represented at middle part and the operations are represented at below part, the last part of this rectangle. Now what are attributes? So an attribute is named property of a class. You need to remember this. An attribute is the named property of a class which describes the object being modeled. So attributes you can say are of many types. If we can talk like derived attribute, so the derived attribute is that attribute which is computed from other attributes. For example, by looking at the birth date, you can easily compute the age of the student. So if we can add age attribute here, then it is called derived attribute. Attributes are generally written along with the visibility factor. Visibility factor we will discuss in my next upcoming slides. So, what is the meaning of this visibility factor? We can make visible attributes by the following ways. In class and especially in object-oriented programming, the object-orientism gave us the facility of visibility of attributes. For example, if we do not want to show our information outside from the class, then we can do this by making that variable private. Or if we want to show our information outside the class or to everyone, then we can make that attribute public. So likewise, object-orientism through class provides us various visibility options. As you can see here, it is denoted, these are basic notations. Plus denotes the public attribute, minus denotes the private attribute, and hash sign denotes the protected attributes or operations. So if we want to show that which attribute is public, you can add plus in front of that attribute, as you can see in the diagram. If you want to show any attribute that it is private, you can add negative sign in front of that attribute, and if any attribute is protected, then you can include hash sign. Now the question comes to your mind that what is the meaning of this protected variable? See, protected variable, sometimes it is needed that we need to give the same properties to our descendant also. Like during inheritance, we can derive many classes from one base class. So if we can make our variable protected, then we can only give its accessibility to the very next derived class only. That means it can goes down up to one level only. Private variables will not be derived in any case. Public variables can be derived on the basis of various conditions, and it goes up to many levels down. but protected variables can goes up to only one level. That is, it can be derived but only for one base class at one time only. It cannot go beyond that. So, if you can see this in the form of this representation, you found that access for these visibility types is shown like this. As you can see here, member of the same class, if public, then it is accessible; if private, then same class it is accessible; if protected, then also same class it is accessible. We cannot discuss the things about package here. Members of the derived class, if public, then it is accessible; if private, then it is not accessible; if protected, then it is accessible. Members of any other class, if public, then it is accessible; if private, then it is not accessible, and after one derivation, protected variables will also be not accessible. So, by looking this chart, it can be easily understood that about the accessibility of various types of attributes. Now, let us understand about the relationships of a class. So, although variety of relationships are present, or you can show with the help of class diagrams, but three main kind of relationships which you found here are dependencies, generalizations and associations. So, what does the dependency mean? So, a dependency means the relation between two or more classes in which a change in one may force changes in the other. However, it will always create a weaker relationship. That means one class depends on other. And if you see the example, here you can see that a student is dependent on the college, which is true. And this dependency relationship is shown by this dashed arrow. Now, second is generalization. So, generalization means a subclass is inherited from its superclass. Generalization relationships helps to connect a subclasses to its superclass. It means from end part to its root part. Okay, from bottom to top part, from branches to the top part of a tree. So, in this example, the class student is generalized from person class. Next is association. Next type of relationship is called association. This kind of relationship represents a static relationship between A and B. So, with the help of example, it is clearly shown that an employee works for an organization, or you can say a student studies in the college. So, student in college is shown with the help of association relationship, which is studies. Now, the next type of relationship is called directive association. Basically, association is having two types, directed and reflexive association. As you can see here, it is also mentioned that some rules for association. Association is mostly verb or verb phrase or noun phrase, and it should be named to indicate the role played by the class attached at the end of the association path, which is mandatory for reflexive associations. So, let us now understand first of all about directed association. So, directed association means it shows a directional relationship represented by a line with an arrowhead. The arrowhead depicts a container contained directional flow. Okay. In reflexive association, This occurs when a class may have multiple functions or responsibilities. For example, a staff member working in an airport may be a pilot, aviation engineer, a ticket dispatcher, a guard or a maintenance crew member as well. Like as your teacher, a teacher teaches you, mentors you, guide you, and sometimes play a role of counselor also. Aggregation. It is also a special type of association that models a whole-part relationship between aggregate and its parts. For example, the class college is made up of one or more students. In aggregation, the contained classes are never totally dependent on the life cycle of the container. Here, the college class will remain even if the student is not available. Multiplicity. It is a factor associated with an attribute. It specifies how many instances of attributes are created when a class is initialized. If a multiplicity is not specified, by default 1 is considered as a default multiplicity. So let us say that there are 100 students in one college and the college can have multiple students. Multiplicity you can express like this. If it is exactly 1, it will write like 1. For 0 and 1 you can write like this. For many you can write like 0 to star or simple star. For 1 or more you can write 1 to star. For exact number 3 to 4 or 6, or a complex relationship, which means that any number of objects other than 2 or 5. So here you can see that 2 and 5 does not belong to this range. Composition. The composition is a special type of aggregation which denotes strong ownership between two classes when one class is a part of another class. For example, if college is composed of classes student, the college could contain many students while each student belongs to only one college. So if college is not functioning, all the students also removed. So it shows strong ownership between two classes. This is the basic difference between two classes, which states that aggregation indicates a relationship where the child can exist separately from their parent class. But composition says that the child will never exist or will never rely independently without its parent. Okay, so this is the basic relationship or basic difference in between aggregation and composition. Abstract classes. It is a class with an operation prototype, but not the implementation. It is also possible to have an abstract class with no operations declared inside of it. An abstract is useful for identifying the functionalities across the classes. You can say that an abstract class is basically a container class, or it is a class where you can simply store your all functions just by giving the declaration part. And whenever it is required in other classes, you can simply take out the functions from the abstract class and use it according to the mentioned given operations. This is the diagram of a class where you can find various multiplicity denotions in between various classes. In this diagram you found multiplicity, aggregation, association, generalization. So this is a diagram in which I have tried to show you the maximum number of relationships of class. Students, this is the end of this video. I hope you get useful and meaningful information from this online video lecture. I hope that you get something interesting. I will try to cover more interesting topics in my upcoming videos. Till then, you can follow the references from here, and thank you. Thank you so much.